Sometimes what kills you isn't what the doctors are paid to find. 20 specialists couldn't save the billionaire. The woman who mopped their floors spotted what they missed. David Crawford deteriorated in his $4 million hospital suite. Machines beeped ominously. Specialists frowned at inexplicable symptoms. Death approached despite world-class medical minds puzzling over his mysterious case. Keisha Foster slipped into the room, invisible as always. Night shift meant fewer eyes to notice her presence. She inhaled antiseptic, expensive cologne, and something else, something metallic. Wrong. Her chemistry-trained mind jolted with recognition. The yellowing fingernails, the particular pattern of hair loss, the subtle discoloration around his gums. She knew exactly what poison was killing him. But who would listen to a housekeeper when 20 specialists had failed? Johns Hopkins Medical Center housed many secrets, but none more exclusive than the ultra-luxury wing where immense wealth purchased absolute privacy. David Crawford's suite resembled a five-star hotel rather than a medical facility, with sophisticated equipment cleverly disguised behind polished wood panels and soft ambient lighting. The tech mogul had spared no expense in his fight against this mysterious illness, demanding America's most brilliant diagnostic minds collaborate to solve his progressive decline. Money could purchase the finest specialists, the most advanced technology, the most luxurious accommodations. It couldn't buy the crucial insight that would save his life. Keisha methodically cleaned the room's expensive surfaces, her movements economical and practiced. At 38, she possessed the hard-earned invisibility of someone who'd learned to navigate elite spaces where her presence was tolerated but rarely acknowledged. Single mother, night shift cleaner, perpetually overlooked by those around her. Yet her trained eyes catalogued every detail, analyzing patterns that Harvard-educated physicians somehow continued to miss. Across the room, Dr. Marcus Coleman addressed his assembled team of medical experts. Distinguished and silver-haired, he commanded immediate attention through reputation alone, his voice carrying the authority of decades at medicine's highest levels. Colleagues, we've systematically eliminated every conventional diagnostic possibility, Dr. Coleman announced to the gathered specialists. Mr. Crawford's condition continues to deteriorate despite our comprehensive interventions. His liver function declines daily while neurological symptoms worsen progressively. Keisha maintained her position near the wall, absorbing every word while appearing focused solely on her cleaning duties. She'd perfected this technique during her university years, listening intently while taking detailed notes before life circumstances forced her departure from academic pursuits. 15 years earlier, Keisha had been the chemistry department's most promising student, a scholarship recipient destined for groundbreaking medical research. Then her parents' tragic accident left 3 younger siblings requiring immediate care and financial support. She withdrew mid-semester, promising herself she'd return to complete her education someday. That day never came. The cleaning staff should complete their duties efficiently, Dr. Coleman stated, finally acknowledging Keisha's presence with obvious impatience. His words dismissed her without direct eye contact, reducing her to function rather than recognizing her as a person. We have critical medical decisions requiring immediate attention. Keisha nodded with practiced composure, despite the familiar sting of casual dismissal. They observed her uniform and assigned tasks, never suspecting the sharp, analytical mind operating behind her professional demeanor. She'd maintained her passion for chemistry through countless library visits, online educational programs during break periods, and scientific journals read during stolen quiet moments. Knowledge without official credentials, expertise without institutional recognition, brilliance without visibility to those who mattered. While continuing her methodical cleaning routine, Keisha's trained eyes examined Crawford's medical chart, positioned nearby. The documented symptoms formed a deeply troubling pattern: progressive peripheral neuropathy, distinctive hair loss characteristics, severe digestive complications. Classic presentations that specialists were analyzing as separate conditions rather than recognizing as unified syndrome. Dr. Coleman moved past her position, unconsciously brushing her aside without acknowledgement or apology. Keisha stepped back automatically, blending seamlessly into the background once again. Dr. Coleman passes by me daily like I'm part of the furniture, she thought with weary resignation. That's precisely why he never notices what I observe every single day. Her analytical gaze shifted toward Crawford's personal belongings, arranged carefully on the marble bathroom counter. Expensive grooming products reflected his wealth and attention to detail, but one particular item drew her focused attention: an elegant jar of premium imported hand cream positioned prominently among the other toiletries. She noted its exact placement had shifted slightly since yesterday's cleaning session. Someone had deliberately moved it, ensuring easy accessibility and regular use. In chemistry, seemingly minor inconsistencies often revealed the most significant answers. The suite's heavy door opened as a well-dressed visitor entered confidently. Brandon Mitchell, according to the guest identification badge clipped to his tailored business suit. Keisha recognized him from financial publications as Crawford's former business rival, now supposedly supportive friend throughout this health crisis. David's condition remains essentially unchanged, Doctor. Coleman informed the visitor with professional courtesy. We're exploring increasingly specialized diagnostic approaches to identify the underlying cause. I brought his preferred hand cream, Mitchell replied smoothly, placing an elegant Swiss-imported container prominently on the bedside table. It's the only brand that doesn't aggravate his increasingly sensitive skin condition. Small comfort during these difficult circumstances. Keisha carefully observed how deliberately Mitchell positioned the expensive container, ensuring it would be noticed immediately and used consistently. Something about his calculated placement triggered her scientific instincts. Too intentional, too insistent, too perfectly positioned for regular application throughout each day. If you believe that true intelligence isn't defined by job titles or uniforms, type in genius below. Later that evening, she overheard two exhausted medical residents discussing Crawford's perplexing case while she cleaned the adjacent consultation room. Their conversation revealed the profound depth of medical confusion surrounding the billionaire's mysterious condition. Most unusual symptom progression I've encountered during residency, the first admitted, fatigue evident in his strained voice. Multiple organ systems failing simultaneously without any identifiable connection or underlying cause. Dr. Coleman suspects some form of autoimmune cascade reaction, his colleague responded thoughtfully. But every laboratory test produces contradictory results that don't support any known condition. Meanwhile, one of tech's most influential figures grows weaker while we chase increasingly unlikely theoretical possibilities. Keisha paused her routine work, mentally connecting conversational fragments with her own careful observations. The documented symptoms, the progressive, mysterious decline, the expensive hand cream appearing with suspicious regularity. A working hypothesis began forming in her scientifically trained mind. 20 doctors couldn't identify what was slowly killing David Crawford, but perhaps someone they'd never think to consult could recognize what their expertise had somehow missed. That evening, Keisha collected her children from their neighbor's apartment, a routine that had become second nature over the years. 12-year-old Marcus and 14-year-old Tasha had adapted remarkably well to her demanding work schedule, completing homework independently and preparing simple meals when her shifts extended beyond normal hours. "Mom, you seem more worried than usual tonight," Tasha observed, with the perceptiveness that often surprised adults who underestimated teenage insight. "Is something complicated happening at the hospital?" "There's a challenging patient situation involving complex medical issues," Keisha replied carefully, maintaining her protective instinct while respecting her daughter's growing maturity. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart." After ensuring both children were settled comfortably for the evening, Keisha spread her precious materials across the kitchen table. Her carefully preserved collection included her undergraduate toxicology textbook, printed articles from respected medical journals, and detailed handwritten notes documenting Crawford's documented symptom progression. The emerging pattern seemed undeniable to anyone possessing proper educational background and analytical training. Why couldn't 20 distinguished specialists recognize what appeared increasingly obvious to her trained perspective? Because they weren't specifically searching for it. Because thallium poisoning belonged to history textbooks, rather than modern medical practice, something associated with Cold War espionage rather than contemporary healthcare facilities. Because standard heavy metal testing panels might easily miss gradual exposure, maintaining blood levels just below typical detection thresholds, because nobody suspected a respected billionaire could be systematically poisoned by someone he trusted completely. And because nobody seriously considered diagnostic opinions from housekeeping staff, regardless of their educational credentials or analytical capabilities. Keisha studied her work uniform hanging beside the kitchen door, the physical symbol of her institutional invisibility within the hospital's rigid hierarchy. Tomorrow she would risk everything to shatter that invisibility barrier, forcing recognition of both the poison and the person who'd correctly identified it. She arrived at work earlier than usual the following morning, carrying a small bag alongside her standard cleaning supplies. Inside were seemingly innocent items: baking soda, aluminum foil, and small containers borrowed from the hospital cafeteria. These basic materials, combined with readily available cleaning solutions, could create primitive but effective testing methods for detecting heavy metal contamination. Her primary objective involved collecting additional evidence to support her growing certainty. During the morning medical rounds, Keisha strategically positioned herself to overhear Crawford's latest documented symptoms. The progression continued, matching thallium toxicity with textbook precision. Worsening peripheral neuropathy, affecting sensation in his hands and feet, accelerating hair loss following the distinctive pattern she remembered from university lectures, severe digestive complications that specialists attributed to stress-related conditions. She needed more than theoretical knowledge to convince skeptical medical authorities. Physical evidence would be required, irrefutable proof that even Dr. Coleman's considerable ego couldn't dismiss outright. During her authorized afternoon break, Keisha used the hospital's public computer terminal to research recent thallium poisoning case studies. Every documented example aligned perfectly with Crawford's presentation: the characteristic neurological symptoms, the specific gastrointestinal issues, the distinctive dermatological manifestations. She composed a careful note on official hospital stationery. Recommend specific testing for thallium contamination. Patient symptom cluster matches classic toxicological presentation. Standard heavy metal panels may miss gradual exposure patterns. While cleaning Dr. Coleman's private office later that afternoon, she positioned the note prominently on his desk, where it couldn't possibly be overlooked or dismissed as accidental placement. The next morning brought the response she'd anticipated, but hoped to avoid. Positioning herself strategically near the physician's conference room, she overheard Dr. Coleman's reaction through the partially opened door. "Apparently," he announced with unmistakable condescension, "our custodial staff has developed medical diagnostic opinions." Derisive chuckles rippled through the assembled physicians, exactly as she'd feared. "Someone left an unsigned note suggesting thallium poisoning," he continued dismissively. "Perhaps we should begin soliciting therapeutic recommendations from cafeteria workers and parking attendants as well." "We completed comprehensive heavy metal screening during initial diagnostic workup," another physician responded supportively. "Standard protocols were followed meticulously according to established guidelines." "Precisely," Dr. Coleman confirmed with obvious satisfaction. "Cleaning personnel attempting amateur medical detective work. What's next? Surgical consultations from maintenance staff." Keisha's chest contracted painfully as familiar humiliation washed over her. Her hands gripped the cleaning cart handle until her knuckles showed pale against her brown skin. The casual dismissal stung deeply, but Crawford's rapidly deteriorating condition mattered infinitely more than her wounded professional pride. She developed an alternative strategy. Dr. Lisa Hayes, the younger physician who'd previously suggested environmental factors, seemed potentially more approachable than the established senior staff hierarchy dominated by institutional pride and rigid thinking. During her afternoon shift, Keisha carefully timed her cleaning routine to intersect with Dr. Hayes in a relatively private corridor away from senior physician oversight. "Excuse me, Doctor." "Hayes," she began, maintaining steady voice control despite her accelerated heartbeat. "Regarding Mr. Crawford's puzzling case, I believe he's suffering from thallium poisoning. His documented symptoms match toxicological textbook presentations exactly. Dr. Hayes' expression shifted from polite attention to visible discomfort, clearly recognizing the institutional awkwardness of this conversation. That's certainly an interesting theoretical possibility. However, we've already conducted appropriate heavy metal testing according to standard protocols. Standard screening panels might miss gradual exposure if the contamination involves consistent small doses, Keisha pressed, drawing directly on her toxicological education. Particularly if the delivery method involves transdermal absorption through his frequently used hand cream. I genuinely appreciate your concern for patient welfare, Doctor. Hayes interrupted diplomatically, checking her watch with obvious nervousness. But I really must attend a scheduled consultation. Perhaps you could discuss your observations with the nursing supervisory staff. She departed quickly, leaving Keisha standing alone in the corridor once again. The predictable weight of institutional invisibility settled around her shoulders like a familiar, unwelcome coat. Later that same evening, hospital security approached Keisha, while she methodically cleaned near the nurses' station. The head of security, a stern middle-aged man with decades of institutional authority, addressed her with formal disapproval that carried clear warning undertones. Miss Foster, we've received multiple reports of you interfering with medical procedures and offering unauthorized diagnostic opinions. Consider this an official warning regarding professional boundaries and appropriate behavior expectations. Keisha nodded silently, her throat constricted with suppressed emotion and familiar humiliation. She desperately needed concrete evidence, irrefutable proof that even Dr. Coleman's considerable professional arrogance couldn't dismiss or rationalize away completely. But obtaining such evidence meant crossing institutional lines that could cost her the steady employment her family absolutely depended on for basic survival needs. That night, alone in the sterile employee break room during her designated meal period, Keisha confronted an impossible decision that kept her mind racing for hours. David Crawford had perhaps mere days remaining before the systematic poisoning became completely irreversible and fatal. Her job security and her children's financial stability couldn't be weighed against a human life hanging in the balance. She formulated a desperate plan, drawing on chemistry knowledge that had remained sharp despite years away from formal laboratory environments. She would need basic cleaning supplies readily available in any hospital, temporary access to standard laboratory equipment during low supervision periods, and absolutely perfect timing to avoid detection by security personnel or suspicious medical staff. Tomorrow she would risk everything to force institutional recognition of what they'd systematically missed, or lose her livelihood attempting to save Crawford's life through scientific proof. Brandon Mitchell returned that afternoon, maintaining his caring friend facade while staying exactly 15 minutes, precisely long enough to ensure the expensive hand cream remained prominently positioned and would be applied regularly throughout Crawford's daily routine. Keisha observed from her strategic position in the hallway, noting how Mitchell subtly encouraged the day shift nurse to apply the imported cream liberally to Crawford's hands and forearms for comfort during his challenging recovery period. After Mitchell's departure, Keisha performed routine cleaning duties in Crawford's private bathroom, studying the hand cream container with intensified scientific scrutiny. The luxurious packaging revealed nothing obviously suspicious to casual observation, but the product itself displayed a barely perceptible metallic sheen when examined under direct fluorescent lighting. She needed a sample for definitive analysis, but removing product openly would immediately trigger investigation and probable termination. Instead, she waited patiently until the evening nursing shift change created a brief window when Crawford's room remained temporarily unattended. With practiced efficiency, developed through years of invisible hospital navigation, Keisha transferred a small amount of cream into a sterile specimen container she'd quietly acquired from the medical supply storage area. The evidence sample disappeared safely into her uniform pocket without detection. At home that evening, after ensuring her children completed their homework and were safely settled for the night, Keisha spread her analysis materials across the kitchen table. Her preserved toxicology textbook, printed research articles from respected medical journals, and detailed notes documenting Crawford's progressive symptom development. The emerging pattern remained undeniable to anyone possessing appropriate scientific education and analytical training. Why couldn't 20 distinguished specialists recognize what seemed increasingly obvious to her trained perspective? Because they weren't actively searching for something so historically rare. Because thallium poisoning belonged to espionage novels, rather than modern medical facilities. Because standard testing protocols might easily miss systematic, gradual exposure. Because nobody suspected a respected billionaire could be deliberately poisoned by his trusted business partner. And because nobody seriously considered diagnostic input from environmental services personnel. Keisha examined her work uniform hanging beside the kitchen door, the physical manifestation of her institutional invisibility within the hospital's entrenched hierarchy. Tomorrow she would shatter that barrier permanently, forcing recognition of both the poison and the analytical mind that had identified it correctly. She arrived at work significantly earlier than her scheduled shift, carrying innocuous supplies that could create effective chemical testing methods. Her makeshift laboratory would be a maintenance closet, her equipment borrowed from hospital stores, her methodology drawn from university training that institutional prejudice had rendered invisible. In the cramped storage space, Keisha worked with scientific precision despite primitive conditions. She'd performed similar analyses in sophisticated university laboratories, earning excellent grades for accuracy achieved with minimal resources and creative problem-solving approaches. The improvised test confirmed her clinical suspicion completely, positive reaction for thallium contamination. She photographed the results with her phone, creating digital documentation that couldn't be dismissed as wishful thinking or amateur mistake. Next, she systematically reviewed Crawford's visitor access logs, searching for patterns that connected to symptom progression timing. The correlation became unmistakable. Brandon Mitchell's supportive visits aligned perfectly with Crawford's documented health deteriorations. The hand cream held a deadly secret that 20 doctors missed. At 2 p.m., Keisha learned about an emergency medical conference scheduled in Crawford's suite. All specialists would attend as his condition had reached critical status, requiring immediate intervention decisions. Perfect timing for what she knew would be the most important moment of her professional life. She changed into her freshest uniform, checked her appearance, and gathered her evidence. Test results, visitor correlation data, symptom timeline analysis, and supporting research documentation. Keisha rehearsed her scientific explanation mentally, drawing on toxicology knowledge memorized during university years that seemed simultaneously distant and immediately relevant. She would have one opportunity to present irrefutable evidence that could save Crawford's life. The doctors assembled in Crawford's luxurious suite, tension evident in their body language and hushed conversations. Doctor. Coleman positioned himself at the center, presenting the latest failed interventions to colleagues who shared his professional frustration and growing desperation. Through the partially open door, she heard Dr. Coleman's defeated voice. "We've exhausted every reasonable diagnostic possibility. Mr. Crawford's condition continues deteriorating despite our most aggressive treatment protocols. Perhaps we should consider transferring him to a specialized research facility," suggested one specialist, desperation creeping into professional composure. "His family is demanding answers we simply cannot provide, Doctor," Coleman continued, the weight of professional failure evident in his exhausted tone. Keisha took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation that would either save Crawford's life or end her career permanently. 20 specialists had exhausted every conventional approach. Perhaps it was time to listen to someone they'd never considered worth consulting. She knocked once on the conference room door and entered without waiting for permission, knowing hesitation would allow them to dismiss her before she could present her life-saving evidence. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward Keisha, with expressions ranging from surprise to obvious irritation. "Doctor." Coleman's face hardened immediately upon recognizing the interruption, his professional authority clearly challenged by her unprecedented breach of protocol. "This is a restricted medical conference regarding critical patient care decisions," he stated firmly. "You need to return later when we've finished our consultation." "Mr. Crawford is dying from thallium poisoning," Keisha declared clearly. her voice steadier than her racing heartbeat. She stepped forward confidently, placing her documented evidence on the conference table. I can prove it conclusively through chemical analysis and symptom correlation. Dr. Coleman's expression shifted to barely controlled anger at this public challenge to his authority. Security needs to escort this person out immediately. This behavior is completely inappropriate and cannot be tolerated under any circumstances. The symptoms match perfectly, Keisha continued, refusing to be silenced before presenting her scientific case. She pointed to her analysis charts spread across the table with professional precision. Progressive ascending peripheral neuropathy, distinctive pattern hair loss, severe abdominal pain, cognitive decline, textbook thallium toxicity presentation. She indicated her improvised test results with scientific authority. I confirm thallium presence in his regularly used hand cream, the imported Swiss brand that Brandon Mitchell brings during every supportive visit. Transdermal absorption through daily skin contact creates slow poisoning over extended periods. This is absolutely ridiculous, Dr. Coleman snapped, his professional reputation under public scrutiny. You're a custodial worker, not a physician or trained toxicologist. This behavior is completely unacceptable. I was a chemistry honors student at Johns Hopkins University before family circumstances forced my withdrawal, Keisha responded, maintaining steady eye contact despite the intimidating situation. The poison is being systematically introduced through the hand cream during Mitchell's visits. The timeline matches symptom progression with mathematical precision. She methodically laid out her evidence, visitor logs correlating with health deteriorations, chemical test results showing thallium contamination, symptom progression charts demonstrating classic toxicity patterns. Her presentation was scientifically rigorous, drawing on toxicology knowledge that remained sharp despite years away from academic environments. Standard heavy metal screening panels miss gradual exposure because the poisoning maintains blood levels just below typical detection thresholds, she explained with technical expertise that surprised the assembled physicians. But cumulative tissue damage creates the documented symptom cascade we're observing. Complete silence filled the conference room as 20 distinguished physicians absorbed the implications of her systematic analysis. Doctor. Coleman opened his mouth to object, but closed it again, examining her evidence more carefully despite his obvious reluctance to acknowledge its potential significance. Doctor. Hayes, the younger physician, who'd previously suggested environmental factors, leaned forward with growing interest and professional curiosity. This analysis actually explains the inconsistent symptom progression that's been puzzling our entire diagnostic team. The hair loss pattern and neurological presentation are completely consistent with thallium toxicity, admitted another specialist, studying Keisha's documentation with obvious respect. Her timeline correlation is remarkably thorough for analysis conducted outside formal laboratory conditions. The silence deepened as medical experts confronted what they had systematically missed and who had discovered it through careful observation and scientific methodology they'd dismissed without proper consideration. The evidence indicates systematic thallium poisoning, Keisha concluded quietly, maintaining professional demeanor despite the magnitude of this moment. The symptoms are textbook presentations if you understand what indicators to recognize. Doctor. Coleman stood motionless as his colleagues examined evidence he couldn't professionally dismiss, regardless of its unexpected source. His medical training forced acknowledgement of scientific accuracy, even when it challenged his institutional assumptions about expertise and authority. How exactly did you conduct this chemical analysis? Asked Dr. Martinez, the hospital's toxicology specialist, his voice carrying genuine professional curiosity rather than dismissive skepticism. Modified sodium rhodizonate reaction testing, Keisha replied without hesitation, drawing on advanced techniques rarely used outside specialized research facilities. Adapted for field analysis using available materials. The color change reaction is unmistakable when thallium ions are present in sufficient concentration. Doctor. Martinez raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed despite institutional prejudices that typically influenced his professional interactions. That's an extremely sophisticated methodology, rarely employed outside advanced laboratory environments. Where did you learn such specialized techniques? Advanced Toxicology Methods course, Johns Hopkins Chemistry Department, Keisha answered, the old regret briefly visible in her expression. Professor Williams's specialized curriculum before circumstances required my academic withdrawal. Recognition flickered across several faces in the room. Professor Williams commanded legendary respect within toxicology research circles, his former students highly regarded throughout the medical community for their analytical expertise. You studied under Professor Williams? Dr. Hayes asked with obvious respect for the prestigious academic connection. His program produced some of our field's most innovative researchers. For one semester, Keisha replied simply, before family tragedy forced my departure from university studies. Dr. Coleman examined her improvised test results with growing acceptance, his medical expertise unable to deny evidence presented through proper scientific methodology, regardless of its unconventional laboratory conditions. The concentration patterns suggest deliberate sustained exposure rather than accidental contamination, Keisha continued, pointing to her timeline analysis with professional confidence. Each cream application delivers sublethal doses that accumulate systematically in body tissues. Symptoms escalate in direct correlation with Mitchell's visit frequency. The specialists began asking technical questions about her methodology and conclusions. With each scientifically accurate response, her institutional invisibility diminished progressively. They were finally seeing her analytical mind rather than her custodial uniform. If we conduct specific thallium testing rather than standard heavy metal screening, we'll find significantly elevated levels, Keisha predicted confidently, particularly in hair samples from recent months, which will demonstrate the systematic poisoning timeline clearly. The conference room energy had transformed completely. The dismissive professional barrier had cracked under the weight of irrefutable scientific evidence presented with expertise they couldn't ignore or rationalize away. What Keisha found in that bathroom would expose a murderer. Dr. Hayes immediately ordered focused thallium testing, breaking the stunned silence that had settled over the assembled physicians. Two specialists rushed to collect samples of both the hand cream and Crawford's blood for immediate laboratory analysis. Dr. Coleman remained frozen, staring at Keisha's methodical evidence presentation. His expression cycled through disbelief, gradual realization, and reluctant professional acknowledgement of what her analysis had revealed about their patient's condition. If your analysis proves correct, he finally managed, his voice strained with professional humiliation, we've been inadvertently worsening his condition with treatments designed for other suspected diagnoses. Chelation therapy designed for mercury exposure would be completely ineffective for thallium toxicity, Keisha confirmed with authority. He requires immediate Prussian blue treatment to bind the poison and prevent additional tissue damage. The medical team exchanged meaningful glances, decades of combined experience recalibrating around evidence presented by someone they'd systematically overlooked and dismissed. A nurse returned breathless from the laboratory within minutes, carrying results that would validate Keisha's analysis completely. Emergency toxicology confirms significant thallium levels in both blood samples and the hand cream, she announced to the stunned conference room. The specialists erupted in controlled chaos. Treatment orders flew between physicians as protocols shifted dramatically. Security personnel received immediate instructions regarding Brandon Mitchell. The investigative machinery of law enforcement began moving with institutional efficiency. Review all security footage showing Mitchell's interactions with the hand cream, Dr. Hayes directed hospital security. We need documentation of how he manipulated the product during his visits. Prussian blue treatment was administered immediately, replacing ineffective therapies that had been designed for incorrectly diagnosed conditions. Additional blood testing confirmed Keisha's diagnostic accuracy with scientific precision that left no room for professional doubt. The chemistry knowledge she'd hidden for years became a weapon against institutional prejudice and medical arrogance that had nearly cost Crawford his life through systematic oversight and dismissive attitudes. 3 hours later, Crawford's vital signs stabilized for the first time in weeks, providing tangible proof of Keisha's analytical breakthrough. The conference room buzzed with energy transformation as hope replaced desperate resignation. Keisha stood quietly near the wall, her presence momentarily forgotten during the medical response flurry. "Doctor?" Coleman approached her position, his imposing frame seeming somehow diminished by recent events and professional humiliation. "Your intervention was," he paused, visibly struggling with institutional pride and scientific accuracy, "completely correct in every detail. We owe you a profound apology for our dismissive behavior. How did you recognize what 20 specialists missed?" he asked, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier condescension and automatic dismissal of her capabilities. "I observe without being observed," Keisha replied with simple honesty. "I analyze patterns without preconceived assumptions about what I should find. I maintained my education privately, despite circumstances that prevented formal credential completion." Dr. Coleman nodded slowly, processing implications that extended far beyond this single case. Professional barriers had been challenged by undeniable scientific evidence presented by someone institutional hierarchy had trained him to overlook completely. Before he could continue the conversation, Crawford's monitors indicated he was regaining consciousness for the first time in several days, creating excitement throughout the medical team attending his recovery. The billionaire's eyes opened gradually, focusing with difficulty on faces surrounding his bedside. "What happened?" he whispered, with voice still weakened by systematic poisoning effects. "Doctor." Coleman faced a critical professional decision: claim credit for the diagnostic breakthrough or acknowledge the truth about who had saved Crawford's life through scientific analysis they'd initially dismissed. He straightened his shoulders, choosing integrity over institutional pride. "You were systematically poisoned with thallium, Mr. Crawford. We missed the diagnosis completely despite extensive testing and consultation." He turned toward Keisha with obvious reluctance, but undeniable professional honesty. "This is Keisha Foster. She identified what 20 specialists overlooked and provided the evidence that saved your life." Complete silence filled the room as every medical professional absorbed the implications of this acknowledgement. Crawford's weak gaze found Keisha among the assembled faces. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice carrying genuine gratitude despite physical weakness. "Thank you for seeing what they missed completely." The silence shattered as Dr. Hayes began applauding, soon joined by other specialists until the sound filled the room. Recognition impossible to dismiss or rationalize away through institutional prejudice. "Sometimes the most valuable knowledge isn't displayed on office walls," Keisha said quietly, maintaining her professional composure despite overwhelming validation of her scientific capabilities. The triumphant moment was interrupted as FBI agents arrived, their presence transforming the hospital wing into an active criminal investigation scene. Agent Rodriguez approached with professional efficiency and obvious respect for Keisha's contribution. "We need to understand exactly how you identified the poisoning method and timeline," she explained, treating Keisha with deference typically reserved for expert witnesses rather than custodial staff. "I recognized the symptom pattern from toxicology education and confirmed through chemical analysis," Keisha explained methodically. The correlation between Mitchell's visits and symptom progression created an undeniable timeline of systematic exposure. "You potentially saved a life and provided crucial evidence for prosecution," Agent Rodriguez noted, with professional appreciation. "Brandon Mitchell is currently in federal custody based on your analysis and evidence." Initial questioning revealed corporate greed as Mitchell's primary motivation, gradual poisoning, designed to force Crawford's resignation before a major merger, allowing Mitchell to assume control of their shared business interests and access to Crawford's substantial personal fortune through partnership agreements. Share your thoughts. Have you ever noticed something important that others missed? Comment below and let's celebrate those moments of hidden brilliance. As the investigation intensified around them, medical staff continued monitoring Crawford's remarkable recovery. The antidote therapy was proving effective, with vital signs improving hourly under careful observation. Dr. Coleman approached Keisha again as evening approached, his demeanor completely transformed from their earlier interactions characterized by dismissive arrogance and professional superiority. "Miss Foster," he began with obvious discomfort, Hospital administration has been informed of your crucial contribution to patient care. They've authorized immediate paid leave while you assist with the federal investigation. The implication was clear. Institutional hierarchy couldn't reconcile someone of her expertise continuing to clean floors after demonstrating such sophisticated analytical capabilities. Status quo had been irreparably disrupted by undeniable evidence. "I appreciate the consideration," Keisha replied diplomatically, understanding the complex institutional recalibration occurring around her unexpected prominence in this high-profile case. FBI agents conducted extensive interviews throughout the evening, documenting every aspect of Keisha's observation and analysis process. Agent Rodriguez treated her testimony with professional respect, typically reserved for expert witnesses. "Your chemical analysis methodology was remarkably sophisticated," Agent Rodriguez noted during questioning. "The improvised laboratory setup demonstrated advanced understanding of toxicological principles." "I maintained my education through independent study," Keisha explained. "Knowledge doesn't disappear just because circumstances prevent formal completion." The federal investigation moved rapidly once concrete evidence pointed toward Brandon Mitchell. Security footage confirmed his manipulation of the hand cream during visits, applying contaminated product directly to Crawford's skin while maintaining his caring friend facade. Financial records revealed Mitchell's desperate need for capital to cover massive gambling debts and failed investment schemes. Crawford's gradual incapacitation would have triggered partnership clauses giving Mitchell controlling interest in their technology companies. He calculated that slow poisoning would appear natural, Agent Rodriguez explained. Corporate succession planning would have made him incredibly wealthy while avoiding murder suspicions. As evening turned to night, hospital staff witnessed a remarkable transformation in Crawford's condition. The Prussian blue treatment was binding thallium efficiently, reversing months of systematic damage. Dr. Hayes approached Keisha in the hallway, her expression mixing professional admiration with institutional awkwardness. "Your diagnostic breakthrough saved his life. We would have lost him within days." "Medical expertise comes in many forms," Keisha replied simply. "Sometimes the answer is visible only from certain perspectives." The following morning brought media attention as news of the poisoning case spread. Hospital security worked to maintain patient privacy while managing growing public interest in the story. Keisha preferred to avoid reporters, focusing instead on assisting federal investigators with detailed timeline reconstruction. Her meticulous observations provided crucial evidence for prosecution. "Your testimony will be central to our case," Agent Rodriguez informed her. "Mitchell's defense team can't dispute the scientific evidence you've documented." "Doctor," Coleman requested a private conversation as the immediate crisis subsided. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by genuine professional respect and personal introspection. "I owe you more than an apology," he began reluctantly. "I represent everything wrong with medical hierarchy and institutional blindness." "People see what they expect to see," Keisha replied without bitterness. "My situation isn't unique. Brilliant minds exist everywhere, often in unexpected places." Meanwhile, Crawford's recovery accelerated beyond medical expectations. Within 48 hours, he was sitting up in bed, speaking clearly and expressing profound gratitude for his second chance at life. "I understand you saved my life," he said to Keisha during her next visit. "Doctor," Coleman explained how 20 specialists missed what you discovered. "I had a different perspective," Keisha replied modestly. "Sometimes being overlooked provides advantages in observation." Crawford studied her with growing interest. "Dr. Coleman mentioned your educational background, chemistry at Johns Hopkins before circumstances intervened." 15 years ago, Keisha confirmed. "Family responsibilities required different priorities." "Intelligence shouldn't be wasted," Crawford declared firmly. "I'd like to discuss possibilities for completing your education." The conversation was interrupted by FBI agents requiring additional testimony, but Crawford's interest in her future remained clearly established. As the week progressed, Mitchell's arrest made national headlines. The sophisticated poisoning scheme, combined with Keisha's analytical breakthrough, captured public imagination. Hospital staff gradually adjusted to treating Keisha with professional respect rather than casual dismissal. Doctors who had previously ignored her presence now nodded acknowledgement when they passed in corridors. "Your situation has opened many eyes," Dr. Hayes observed. "People are questioning assumptions about expertise and credentials. The institutional transformation extended beyond individual attitudes. Hospital administration scheduled meetings to discuss utilization of employee knowledge and skills beyond traditional job descriptions. This case has revealed systematic problems with how we value human capabilities," the chief of medicine acknowledged during an emergency administrative meeting. "We need comprehensive review of how we utilize employee knowledge regardless of job classification." Keisha found herself in the unprecedented position of consulting on hospital policy changes. Her insights about observation and pattern recognition were being formally documented for training purposes. "Your experience demonstrates that expertise exists throughout our organization, Dr. Coleman admitted during a department meeting. "We've been blind to resources under our own roof." The federal investigation accelerated as evidence mounted against Brandon Mitchell. Financial forensics revealed extensive gambling debts and desperate investment schemes that motivated his elaborate poisoning plot. "He researched thallium specifically because it mimics natural illness," Agent Rodriguez explained during a briefing. "The plan was nearly perfect, except for one thing he couldn't control." "What was that?" Keisha asked. "He couldn't predict that someone with your background would be cleaning Crawford's room and making connections that 20 specialists missed." Mitchell's arrest had triggered a comprehensive review of Crawford's business partnerships and financial arrangements. The FBI discovered additional suspicious activity dating back months. "Your observation saved more than Crawford's life," Agent Rodriguez noted. "We've uncovered evidence of securities fraud and embezzlement that might have gone undetected for years." Crawford's recovery continued remarkably. Within a week, he was conducting business from his hospital bed, his gratitude toward Keisha evident in every interaction. "I've been thinking about our conversation regarding your education," he told her during one visit. "I'd like to establish a foundation specifically for people in situations like yours." "Situations like mine?" Keisha asked. "Brilliant minds whose circumstances interrupted formal education. Talent that goes unrecognized because it doesn't come with proper credentials." The media attention surrounding the case had attracted national interest in stories about hidden expertise in unexpected places. Reporters requested interviews with Keisha, though she preferred maintaining privacy. "The story isn't about me," she told one persistent journalist. "It's about questioning assumptions about where knowledge exists and how we value different perspectives." Dr. Hayes approached her with an unexpected proposition during the second week of the investigation. "Hopkins is offering you a position in our toxicology department," she announced. "Part-time while you complete your degree, full-time afterward." "They want to hire me?" Keisha asked, surprised by the institutional reversal. "They want to hire the person who solved what 20 specialists couldn't. Your analytical capabilities are exactly what we need." The hospital's board of directors had indeed approved an unprecedented arrangement. Keisha would receive full educational support to complete her chemistry degree while working part-time in the toxicology laboratory. "It's not charity," the chief of medicine clarified during their meeting. "It's recognition of existing expertise that we failed to utilize properly." Meanwhile, Mitchell's legal situation deteriorated as federal prosecutors built their case. The evidence Keisha had documented provided crucial foundation for charges of attempted murder and corporate fraud. "Your chemical analysis will be central to prosecution," the district attorney informed her. "Defense attorneys can't dispute scientific evidence you've documented." Crawford's business empire faced scrutiny as investigators examined Mitchell's access to financial systems and corporate decision-making processes. The poisoning scheme had been designed to trigger partnership agreements that would have transferred controlling interests. "He was months away from complete success," Agent Rodriguez noted. Crawford's incapacitation would have made Mitchell one of the wealthiest men in technology. As Crawford's strength returned, his determination to prevent similar situations intensified. The foundation he'd proposed for interrupted education became his primary focus. Intelligence is distributed randomly, he explained to Keisha. But opportunity isn't. We need to change that systematic inequality. The hospital's transformation accelerated beyond individual attitude changes. Administrative policies were being rewritten to recognize and utilize employee expertise, regardless of official job classifications. Your case has become a model for institutional change, Dr. Coleman admitted. Medical schools are using it to teach about diagnostic humility and recognizing expertise in unexpected places. Keisha's children had watched their mother's sudden prominence with mixture of pride and confusion. Tasha, particularly, understood the broader implications. "So, you were always this smart, but nobody listened before?" she asked. "Intelligence without platform isn't very useful," Keisha replied. "Sometimes circumstances have to create opportunities for recognition." The chemistry knowledge that had been her private passion was now becoming her professional future. After 15 years of delay, her interrupted education would finally resume. "The Foundation will support others like you," Crawford explained during one of their planning meetings. "People whose brilliance was hidden by circumstances beyond their control." As the first month concluded, Mitchell's legal team attempted plea negotiations. The evidence against him was overwhelming, partly due to Keisha's meticulous documentation of the poisoning timeline. "He's facing life imprisonment," Agent Rodriguez updated her. "Your analysis made the case impossible to defend." The transformation in how hospital staff interacted with Keisha was complete. Doctors who had previously ignored her presence now sought her opinions on complex cases. "Your perspective is valuable precisely because it's different," Dr. Hayes observed. "You see patterns we miss because of our training limitations." 20 doctors missed what the housekeeper saw immediately. And that observation was changing everything about how the medical community understood expertise, recognition, and the value of diverse perspectives in solving complex problems. Brandon Mitchell's trial date was set for 6 months later, giving prosecutors time to build their comprehensive case. Keisha's testimony would be crucial, but her life had already changed dramatically in the weeks following Crawford's rescue. The Crawford Foundation for Interrupted Excellence was officially established with Keisha as its inspiration and first recipient. The Foundation's mission focused specifically on individuals whose educational journeys had been disrupted by circumstances beyond their control. "We're looking for people like you," Crawford explained during the Foundation's planning meetings. "Brilliant minds that traditional systems have overlooked or dismissed." Johns Hopkins offered Keisha a full scholarship to complete her chemistry degree, with guaranteed placement in their toxicology department upon graduation. The arrangement included living stipends and childcare support to ensure practical obstacles wouldn't interfere again. "This isn't charity," the dean clarified during their meeting. "It's investment in demonstrated analytical capability that we were foolish to overlook." Keisha's story had reached national attention, inspiring similar programs at medical institutions across the country. Her case became a catalyst for examining how expertise was recognized and valued in healthcare settings. "You've started a movement," Dr. Coleman observed during one of their conversations. "Medical schools are restructuring curricula to address diagnostic humility and recognizing knowledge in unexpected places." The hospital had implemented new policies, encouraging input from all staff levels on patient care observations. Environmental services, food service, and maintenance personnel were being trained to recognize and report unusual patterns they might observe. "Your success demonstrates that healing involves entire teams," the chief of medicine acknowledged. "Everyone who interacts with patients has potential to contribute valuable insights." Media interviews, though limited, had generated widespread interest in stories about hidden expertise throughout healthcare systems. Reporters documented similar cases where support staff had made crucial observations that medical professionals had missed. "This happens more often than people realize," Keisha told one interviewer. "The difference is usually that nobody listens or takes the observations seriously." Mitchell's corporate empire was being dismantled as federal investigators uncovered additional fraudulent activities. His systematic poisoning of Crawford had been part of larger schemes involving securities manipulation and embezzlement. He was running multiple criminal enterprises, Agent Rodriguez updated her. Your intervention exposed corruption that extended far beyond the attempted murder. Crawford's recovery had become complete, with no lasting effects from the thallium poisoning. His gratitude toward Keisha remained profound, driving his commitment to creating opportunities for others in similar situations. You gave me my life back, he told her, during one foundation planning session. Now we need to give opportunities back to people whose potential has been ignored. The foundation's first year would support 50 individuals whose education had been interrupted by family emergencies, financial crises, or other circumstances beyond their control. Each recipient would receive comprehensive support designed to address practical barriers to academic completion. We're not just providing scholarships, Crawford explained. We're creating systematic change that recognizes intelligence wherever it exists. Keisha's children had adapted remarkably well to their changing circumstances. Tasha, particularly, had been inspired by her mother's example to pursue science more seriously. I want to study chemistry like you did, Tasha announced, but I want to finish what I start. You will, Keisha assured her. And you'll have advantages I didn't have. The hospital's toxicology department eagerly anticipated Keisha's arrival as both student and colleague. Her unconventional background was seen as an asset rather than limitation. Traditional education is valuable, Dr. Hayes noted, but real-world experience and analytical thinking are equally important. You bring perspectives we need. Mitchell's legal team had attempted multiple strategies to avoid trial, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Keisha's chemical analysis provided irrefutable proof of systematic poisoning that defense attorneys couldn't challenge. He's going to plead guilty, Agent Rodriguez informed her. Life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The case had broader implications for corporate security and partnership agreements. Business schools were using Mitchell's scheme as a case study in fraud detection and corporate governance. Your analysis didn't just save a life, Crawford observed. It exposed vulnerabilities in business systems that needed addressing. As Keisha prepared to begin her return to formal education, she reflected on the journey from invisible housekeeper to recognized expert. The transformation felt surreal, but earned through years of maintained learning and careful observation. Knowledge belongs to those who pursue it, she had told another support staff member, who expressed interest in continuing education. Credentials are important, but understanding comes from curiosity and persistence. The Foundation's selection committee was reviewing applications from hundreds of candidates whose stories echoed Keisha's experience. Single parents, family caregivers, and individuals whose circumstances had interrupted promising educational trajectories. Every application represents potential we're finally ready to recognize, Crawford noted during one review session. Hospital policies continued evolving to better utilize diverse expertise throughout the organization. Keisha's case had become the catalyst for systematic changes in how medical institutions valued and incorporated different perspectives. You've changed how we think about who can contribute to patient care, Dr. Coleman admitted. That legacy will extend far beyond your individual success. 6 months after saving Crawford's life, Keisha walked through the main entrance of Johns Hopkins University as a returning student. The contrast with her previous entrances through service doors felt symbolic of larger transformations in her life. Her first day of classes brought mixture of excitement and nervousness. At 38, she was older than typical undergraduates, but her professors understood her unique background and academic preparation. Your practical experience provides context that traditional students lack, her analytical chemistry professor noted. You understand real-world applications that textbooks can't teach. The Crawford Foundation had grown rapidly, receiving applications from across the country. Keisha served on the selection committee, helping identify candidates whose interrupted educations deserved completion opportunities. We're looking for people who never stopped learning, she explained to Foundation staff. Formal education was delayed, but intellectual growth continued. Mitchell's guilty plea had resulted in life imprisonment without parole possibility. The trial had been avoided, but his case continued generating discussion about corporate fraud and the sophistication of his poisoning scheme. Justice was served, Agent Rodriguez noted during their final meeting. Your courage and expertise prevented murder and exposed extensive criminal activity. Crawford's business empire had been restructured following the investigation, with new oversight procedures designed to prevent similar insider threats. The case had become a business school study in corporate security and partnership verification. Your intervention saved more than my life, Crawford told Keisha during one foundation meeting. It exposed systematic vulnerabilities that needed addressing. The hospital had implemented comprehensive policy changes inspired by Keisha's case. Staff at all levels were encouraged to contribute observations and insights relevant to patient care, regardless of their official job classifications. We've discovered remarkable analytical capabilities throughout our organization, the Chief of Medicine reported. Expertise exists everywhere when we bother to recognize and develop it. Keisha's academic performance exceeded expectations, earning top grades in advanced chemistry courses. Her professors frequently used her real-world experience as teaching examples for other students. She brings practical context that enhances everyone's learning, her toxicology professor observed. Her case studies are more valuable than textbook examples. The Foundation's first cohort included a hospital orderly studying engineering, a cafeteria worker pursuing nursing, and a security guard completing a business degree. Each had demonstrated intellectual capability that circumstances had prevented from developing. These stories are everywhere once you start looking, Keisha noted during a Foundation conference. We're just the beginning of recognizing hidden potential. Media attention had gradually decreased, allowing Keisha to focus on education and family. However, her story continued inspiring similar programs at institutions nationwide. The impact extends beyond individual success stories, an education policy researcher noted. Systematic changes are recognizing diverse paths to expertise. Crawford's gratitude remained evident in every interaction. The Foundation had become his primary focus, with plans for expansion to support hundreds of interrupted educational journeys annually. Intelligence doesn't follow traditional timelines, he stated during a Foundation fundraising event. Some of our most valuable contributors will be people whose paths were unconventional. Keisha's children had thrived during the transition period. Tasha was excelling in advanced science courses, inspired by her mother's example and determination. I want to study chemistry like you, Tasha announced, but I want to help people too. You will, Keisha assured her, and you'll have opportunities I couldn't have imagined. The hospital's toxicology department had reserved a position for Keisha upon graduation. Her unique combination of formal education and practical experience was considered ideal for their research initiatives. We need people who understand both academic theory and real-world application, Dr. Hayes explained. Your background provides exactly that combination. As her second semester began, Keisha reflected on the journey from invisible custodial worker to recognized analytical expert. The transformation had required courage, but the foundation had been built through years of maintained learning and careful observation. Education isn't just about degrees, she told a group of foundation applicants. It's about developing your mind regardless of circumstances. The Crawford Foundation's selection committee continued reviewing applications that demonstrated the widespread nature of interrupted educational potential. Each story reinforced the need for systematic change in how society recognized and developed human capabilities. We're identifying talent that traditional systems miss, Crawford observed during one review session. Every candidate represents unrealized potential. Hospital staff interactions with Keisha had evolved from respectful acknowledgement to genuine professional collaboration. Doctors sought her input on complex cases, valuing her unique analytical perspective. You see patterns differently because your experience is different, Dr. Coleman noted. That diversity of thought improves all our diagnostic capabilities. The Foundation's impact extended beyond individual recipients. Universities were developing programs specifically designed for non-traditional students whose life experiences provided valuable perspectives. Academic institutions are finally recognizing that intelligence comes in many forms, the Johns Hopkins dean observed. Students like Keisha enhance everyone's educational experience. As the academic year progressed, Keisha maintained the balance between student, mother, and foundation committee member. Each role reinforced her commitment to creating opportunities for others whose potential had been overlooked. "This is just the beginning," she told herself while studying late one evening. "Every person we help creates possibilities for others." 2 years after the diagnosis that changed everything, Keisha stood in her graduation cap and gown, surrounded by family and friends who had supported her journey back to academic completion. At 40, she was older than typical graduates, but her path had been anything but traditional. "Mom, I'm so proud of you," Tasha whispered as they prepared for the ceremony. "You never gave up on your dreams." "Dreams delayed aren't dreams denied," Keisha replied, adjusting her graduation cap. "Sometimes the timing is different than we planned." Crawford attended the ceremony as foundation chairman and personal friend. His presence symbolized the extraordinary journey from life-threatening crisis to educational triumph. "You've proven that excellence emerges when circumstances allow," he told her before the ceremony. "The foundation will help others follow similar paths." The graduation speaker referenced Keisha's story during the commencement address, using her experience as an example of perseverance and the value of continued learning despite obstacles. "Miss Foster demonstrates that education is a lifelong journey," the speaker noted. "Her path reminds us that knowledge belongs to those who pursue it, regardless of when that pursuit begins." Dr. Coleman and the hospital toxicology team attended the ceremony, eager to welcome their new colleague. The job waiting for her represented recognition of both formal credentials and practical expertise. "We're not just hiring a graduate," Dr. Hayes explained. "We're welcoming someone whose unique perspective will enhance our diagnostic capabilities." The Crawford Foundation had expanded dramatically, supporting over 200 individuals whose educational journeys had been interrupted by circumstances beyond their control. Each success story reinforced the program's value. "Keisha's case was the catalyst," Crawford noted during a foundation board meeting, "but she's become one of hundreds of examples demonstrating that potential exists everywhere." Media coverage of her graduation focused on the broader implications of her journey. Educational institutions nationwide had implemented programs designed to recognize and support non-traditional students with interrupted academic histories. "The impact extends far beyond individual achievement," an education policy expert observed. "Systematic changes are creating opportunities for people whose potential was previously overlooked." As she crossed the graduation stage to receive her chemistry degree, Keisha thought about the 15-year journey from promising student to successful graduate. The delay had been challenging, but it had also provided perspectives that enhanced her understanding. "Life experience combined with formal education creates unique capabilities," her faculty advisor had noted. "You bring practical context that traditional students often lack." The hospital had continued implementing policies inspired by Keisha's case. Staff at all levels were encouraged to contribute observations and insights, creating more collaborative approaches to patient care. "We've discovered analytical capabilities throughout our organization," the chief of medicine reported. "Recognizing diverse expertise has improved patient outcomes significantly." Following graduation, Keisha began her position in the hospital's toxicology department, where her colleagues valued both her academic training and practical experience with poison detection and analysis. "Your case study is required reading in toxicology programs," Dr. Martinez informed her. "Students learn about diagnostic thinking and recognizing patterns through your analysis." The foundation's impact had attracted national attention from other philanthropists interested in supporting interrupted educational journeys. Similar programs were being established at institutions across the country. "Intelligence and circumstances don't always align," Crawford observed during a foundation conference. "Our role is creating opportunities when they do." Keisha's story had become part of medical education curricula, teaching future physicians about diagnostic humility and the value of listening to diverse perspectives in healthcare settings. Her case demonstrates that expertise can emerge from unexpected sources, medical school instructors noted. Students learn to value input from all team members. As she settled into her new professional role, Keisha maintained involvement with the Foundation's selection and mentoring programs. Her experience provided guidance for others navigating similar educational journeys. "The path isn't always linear," she told Foundation recipients, "but persistence and continued learning create opportunities when circumstances align." Her children had thrived during the transition years. Tasha was excelling in advanced science courses with plans to study chemistry, while Marcus had developed interests in engineering, inspired by his mother's analytical approach to problem-solving. "You showed us that learning never stops," Tasha noted. "Education isn't just about school, it's about growing your mind." The hospital's transformation continued as other staff members pursued educational opportunities, inspired by Keisha's example. Environmental services, food service, and maintenance personnel were enrolling in degree programs with Foundation support. "She opened doors for everyone," one colleague observed. "We now see potential throughout our organization." Crawford's gratitude remained profound years after his recovery. The Foundation had become his legacy project, ensuring that circumstances wouldn't prevent others from developing their intellectual capabilities. "Keisha saved my life twice," he explained to Foundation donors, "once through her medical intervention, and again by inspiring systematic change that recognizes human potential wherever it exists." As her first year in the toxicology department concluded, Keisha had contributed to several significant diagnostic breakthroughs. Her unique perspective and analytical capabilities were proving valuable in complex cases that challenged traditional approaches. "You see connections that others miss," Dr. Hayes observed. "Your background provides analytical advantages that formal training alone can't create." The Foundation continued expanding, with plans to support thousands of interrupted educational journeys annually. Each success story validated the program's mission and demonstrated the widespread nature of overlooked potential. "We're changing how society recognizes and develops human capabilities," Crawford noted during a board meeting. "Every graduate creates possibilities for others." 5 years after the diagnosis that changed everything, Keisha Foster had become Dr. Keisha Foster, having completed her PhD in analytical toxicology with highest honors. Her dissertation on pattern recognition in poisoning cases was considered groundbreaking in the field. "Your research combines theoretical knowledge with practical application in ways that advance our entire discipline," her doctoral advisor noted during the defense. "This work will influence toxicology training for years to come." The Crawford Foundation for Interrupted Excellence had grown into a national organization, supporting over 5,000 individuals annually. Universities across the country had established partnerships to identify and develop overlooked intellectual potential. "We've created systematic change that recognizes human capabilities regardless of circumstances," Crawford observed during the Foundation's 5th anniversary celebration. Keisha's courage started a movement that continues expanding. Her position at Johns Hopkins had evolved into a dual role combining clinical toxicology with research into diagnostic methodology. Her unique background provided insights that traditional academic preparation couldn't replicate. "Dr. Foster represents the future of medical expertise," the department chair explained. "Her combination of real-world experience and formal training creates analytical capabilities we need more of." The hospital had become a model for institutions seeking to utilize diverse employee expertise. Policies developed following Keisha's case were being adopted by medical centers nationwide. "We've learned that healing involves entire teams," the chief of medicine noted. "Everyone who interacts with patients has potential to contribute valuable insights." Keisha's children had grown into accomplished students inspired by their mother's example. Tasha was completing her chemistry degree with plans for medical school, while Marcus was studying engineering with focus on healthcare technology. "Mom showed us that education is about more than degrees," Tasha explained during a Foundation scholarship interview. "It's about developing your mind and using knowledge to help others." The impact of Keisha's story extended far beyond individual success. Medical schools had incorporated her case into curricula teaching diagnostic humility and the importance of diverse perspectives in healthcare. Students learned that expertise can emerge from unexpected sources, medical education administrators noted. Her example teaches future physicians to value input from all team members. Brandon Mitchell remained in federal prison, his case serving as a cautionary tale about corporate fraud and the sophistication of modern poisoning schemes. Law enforcement agencies used his methods as training examples for financial crime investigators. The case demonstrates how analytical thinking can expose complex criminal activity, FBI instructors noted. Dr. Foster's intervention prevented murder and uncovered extensive corporate corruption. Crawford's business empire had been restructured with enhanced security measures designed to prevent insider threats. The changes influenced corporate governance standards throughout the technology industry. Her intervention exposed vulnerabilities that needed addressing, business security experts observed. The case study is required reading for corporate risk management programs. As she approached her 40th birthday, Keisha reflected on the extraordinary journey from invisible custodial worker to respected analytical expert. The transformation had required courage and persistence, but the foundation had been built through years of maintained learning. Education isn't confined to traditional timelines, she told a group of Foundation Scholarship recipients. Some of our most valuable insights come from people whose paths were unconventional. The Foundation's selection committee continued identifying candidates whose interrupted educations deserved completion opportunities. Each application reinforced the widespread nature of overlooked intellectual potential. We're discovering brilliant minds everywhere, Foundation staff noted. The challenge has never been lack of talent, it's been lack of opportunity. Keisha's research into pattern recognition had practical applications beyond toxicology. Her methodologies were being adapted for use in other diagnostic disciplines and criminal investigation techniques. Dr. Foster's approach to analytical thinking has broad implications, research colleagues observed. Her work influences how we understand observation and pattern recognition across multiple fields. The hospital's toxicology department had become a premier training center, partly due to Keisha's innovative teaching methods that combined academic theory with practical case analysis. She teaches students to see patterns that textbooks can't convey, program administrators noted. Her real-world experience provides context that enhances everyone's learning. International recognition had followed, as medical institutions worldwide adopted policies inspired by Keisha's case. The concept of recognizing and developing hidden expertise had become a global healthcare movement. Her story demonstrates universal principles about human potential, international conference speakers noted. Intelligence exists everywhere when we create opportunities for recognition and development. Crawford's commitment to the Foundation remained unwavering, with plans for expansion into international programs supporting interrupted educational journeys in developing countries. We're addressing systematic inequalities that prevent intellectual development, he explained to potential donors. Every person we help creates possibilities for others in their communities. As she prepared her latest research presentation, Keisha considered the broader implications of her journey. Individual success was meaningful, but systematic change that created opportunities for others had become her primary motivation. This was never just about my education, she told colleagues. It's about changing how society recognizes and develops human capabilities. The Foundation's impact statistics were impressive. Thousands of completed degrees, hundreds of career transformations, and countless family situations improved through educational advancement. Each number represented a life changed and potential realized. We've proven that circumstances don't determine capabilities, Foundation researchers noted. Given opportunity and support, people accomplish remarkable things regardless of their starting point. Hospital staff who had known Keisha during her custodial years remained inspired by her transformation. Her example had motivated dozens of colleagues to pursue educational advancement through Foundation programs. She opened doors for all of us, one colleague observed. We now see potential throughout our organization that was invisible before. 10 years after the night she identified thallium poisoning in David Crawford's hand cream, Dr. Keisha Foster stood before an international medical conference delivering the keynote address on hidden expertise in healthcare settings. Intelligence doesn't announce itself with credentials, she told the assembled physicians and administrators. Some of our most valuable insights come from people whose knowledge exists outside traditional recognition systems. The Crawford Foundation had become a global organization supporting educational advancement for people whose circumstances had interrupted formal learning. 25,000 individuals had completed degrees through foundation programs, creating ripple effects in communities worldwide. "We've demonstrated that potential exists everywhere," Crawford noted during the Foundation's 10th anniversary celebration. "Systematic barriers, not lack of ability, prevent people from developing their capabilities." Keisha's research had revolutionized diagnostic training, with her pattern recognition methodologies becoming standard curriculum in medical schools internationally. Her approach to analytical thinking influenced fields beyond healthcare. Dr. Foster's work changed how we understand observation and analysis, colleagues noted. Her methods are being applied in criminal investigation, business analysis, and scientific research. The hospital where she had once cleaned floors now bore a wing named in her honor, the Foster Center for Diagnostic Excellence. The facility specialized in complex cases requiring innovative analytical approaches. "This represents more than individual achievement," the hospital board chairman explained during the dedication ceremony. "It symbolizes our commitment to recognizing expertise wherever it exists." Her children had followed paths inspired by their mother's example. Dr. Tasha Foster was completing her medical residency in toxicology, while Marcus Foster had become a biomedical engineer developing diagnostic technologies. "Mom taught us that learning never stops," Tasha explained during a medical school interview. "Education is about growing your mind and using knowledge to help others." The Foundation's selection process had evolved into a sophisticated system for identifying interrupted educational potential. Partnerships with employers, community organizations, and government agencies created networks for recognizing hidden talent. "We've learned to look beyond traditional indicators," Foundation administrators noted. Some of our most successful graduates had been overlooked by conventional systems for years. International recognition had established Keisha as a leading voice in discussions about educational equity and the development of human potential. Her speaking engagements attracted audiences from education, healthcare, business, and government sectors. Dr. Foster's story demonstrates universal principles, conference organizers noted. Her experience provides insights applicable to any field seeking to identify and develop overlooked capabilities. The original poisoning case continued serving as a training example for law enforcement agencies worldwide. Brandon Mitchell's scheme had become a case study in financial crime and corporate fraud prevention. The case shows how analytical thinking can expose sophisticated criminal activity, FBI training instructors noted. Dr. Foster's intervention prevented murder and uncovered extensive corruption. Crawford's gratitude had evolved into a lifelong commitment to educational philanthropy. The foundation had become his primary legacy, ensuring that financial or circumstantial barriers wouldn't prevent intellectual development. "Keisha saved my life and showed me how to save others," he explained to potential donors. "Every person we help creates possibilities for their families and communities." The hospital's policies inspired by Keisha's case had been adopted by healthcare institutions globally. The concept of utilizing diverse employee expertise had become standard practice in progressive medical organizations. "We've learned that healing involves entire teams," medical administrators noted. "Everyone who interacts with patients has potential to contribute valuable insights." As she approached her 50th birthday, Keisha reflected on the extraordinary journey from overlooked custodial worker to internationally recognized expert. The transformation had required courage, but the impact extended far beyond personal achievement. "This was never about individual success," she told Foundation scholarship recipients. "It was about creating systematic change that recognizes human potential wherever it exists." Her latest research project involved developing artificial intelligence systems that could identify diagnostic patterns using methodologies inspired by her own analytical approach. The work combined traditional medical knowledge with innovative pattern recognition techniques. Dr. Foster's methods are being programmed into diagnostic systems, technology developers noted. Her approach to observation and analysis is enhancing computer-assisted medical diagnosis. The Foundation's impact had attracted support from governments and international organizations interested in developing human potential as a strategy for economic and social advancement. Educational investment in overlooked populations generates remarkable returns, economic researchers noted. The Foundation model is being adapted for use in developing countries worldwide. Universities had established endowed chairs in Keisha's name, supporting research into non-traditional pathways to expertise and the development of analytical thinking skills. She changed how we understand intelligence and education, academic administrators noted. Her legacy influences how institutions recognize and develop human capabilities. As her keynote address concluded, Keisha looked out at the audience of medical professionals who now understood that expertise could emerge from unexpected sources. 20 years ago, I was invisible in rooms like this, she said. Today, I hope my story reminds you to see the potential in everyone you encounter. The next breakthrough in your field might come from someone you'd never think to ask. The standing ovation that followed represented more than appreciation for her presentation. It symbolized recognition that intelligence, persistence, and analytical thinking could emerge from anywhere when given opportunity and support. Thank you to everyone who typed genius and shared your stories of hidden brilliance. Reading your experiences proves that exceptional minds exist everywhere, often in the most unexpected places. Together, we recognize that wisdom doesn't require a diploma to be valuable. If this story inspired you, please subscribe for more powerful narratives of courage, justice, and the triumph of overlooked genius. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most important insights come from those society trains itself not to see.